1 second. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this session of the summit with my good friend, Allan Iverson from Babolat. I'm really excited to talk to Allan about rackets, footwear, strings, and other equipment. We've had Allan on from Babolat for many years now on the summit. It's always a pleasure to have him on. So, and as you all know, I'm a huge fan of Babolat products, but we're also going to be talking about just, how to pick the right gear for yourself, as well as just the 2024 trends of like how in what direction the racket brands are going. So going to be really fun. I know there's a lot of gearheads out there, and we always get a lot of questions during this session with Allan every year. So please feel free to keep asking more questions. So Allan, first of all, thanks so much for taking the time to come on. How's everything going?
Great, super excited to be here. And kind of doing something new this year. Like we've done a lot in my backyard and other places during COVID, but it's great to be in an actual shop. We're here at the Sweet Spot Tennis, right? It's in Burbank. So good with my good friend Jeff Iverson and Eugene, who run the shop here. They do a great job in LA. So we wanted to connect a little locally. So for you people who are looking locally, you can connect with them, and I might have something special for you if you mention you saw this podcast that Maribon does such a great job with.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it, Allan. Yeah, huge shout out to Sweet Spot Tennis, as Allan mentioned, in Burbank, California. So definitely stop by and mention that you saw the summit session with Allan and I, and I think they might have something nice for you there. So really appreciate that. And Allan, first off, I just want to thank you and Babolat as well for sending me some product. I mean, I've been playing with Babolat for many years now, and I just started playing with the Pre-Aero 98, which I have one of them right here, and I really like it. I don't know if we can obviously talk about the update and how different it is, but I mean, maybe just to give a little review for me is I felt like this one, in comparison to the 2020 version, it felt more stable. It felt like there was more substance in the head as well. And I know I can ask you, or you can talk about the tech behind that. But yeah, I just felt a bit more confident with, and more connected with the ball as well. It felt a bit more comfortable. And yeah, I've just really been enjoying it. Starting with some RPM blast, 17 gauge at 50 pounds on my crank, which you can see back there. And yeah,
that's very old
really
school of you. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I need to get a Wise tensioner, or maybe like a really sweet Babolat. Was it 5-star machine y'all got? Is that what?
Yeah, now Racket Station, but yeah, it used to be Star
okay.
5, and they had the sensor. Yeah.
Yeah. Very
I
cool.
mean, I think what's unique about what's happening in product now is that it's so adapted and kind of specialized, right? And that's, one of the unique things I've learned with Babolat as a product producers, the French really think a lot about who they're specifically designing the product for. So part of the reasons why you want to connect with your local dealer is that you want to help them walk you through the process to get not only the right racket, but the right string job. And the same thing for footwear. There's a lot of choices that's adapted to you and what you really want as a player. So, it's not a one size fits all thing for rackets, and really for it could be string for sure, definitely footwear and apparel are that way too. So in terms of Pre-Aero 98, that's one of the major trends of this year. I mean, it was with Carlos Alcaraz coming on, especially at the time when Nadal was having his injury concerns, and hopefully we see him back for the French Open, because there's still just so much excitement around him around. And I'm not sure who's more popular now, him or his son, but that's okay. His son swings that mini racket pretty good. Okay. So, but Carlos is in the Pre-Aero 98, so is Holger Rune, Arthur Fies, if you know him, coming up. But there's a lot of, and it was part of kind of my challenge, as, Babolat was really, has been known in the top 2 selling rackets are Pre-Aero Pure Drive. They're 100 square inch rackets, and they're thicker beams. Well, The 98's meant to be a more controllable pure aero, but it's a thinner beam 98 in a little denser pattern. So you're changing a lot of elements to give it better feel and control. And that's really what's happened in this adapted product, because it's a little denser pattern. It's a 16 by 20 versus 16-19. Little heavier, it's 10-8 versus 10-6, unstrung weight. But that denser pattern gives you a little more control, but also softens the frame. And what you're noticing is Babolat's been working with creating better sound. So that makes a difference. They found first with strings, but also with the racket. So you want the proper vibration happening, but players want the feedback, not just, in the feel, but also how the racket sounds. And that's where people will even vary. Some people want a dampener, some people no dampener at all, right? And that changes how the racket sounds when you hit it. A dampener doesn't necessarily help vibration to your arm, but it does change the sound of how it's the connection and when you hit. So Chang never wanted a dampener. He wanted to hear the spin. Other people, Eggsy had a rubber band. Pete Sampras had that little round plumbers, thing that he put in his. Nadal uses the custom damp. And it just depends. So, with Carlos coming in the 98, there's, and you see a lot of players in that 98 racket. Typically, it's the more aggressive player taking the ball earlier. You're hitting on the rise with bigger swings. You need the feel and control. The guys further back, taking bigger swings, 2 or 3 feet off the baseline, sometimes want a bigger head size there for more power.
Mm-hmm.
So what changed with the 98 you have, it used to be called Pure Aero VS, is they put a flax material in. This material helped dampening, but also improved the sound. And this is part of the reason why you, as a Pure Aero VS user, I want you to hit the Pure Aero 98, because, at the end of the day, we can talk about rackets, but you got to see what you think, and how does it feel for you? And that's the same thing I'm telling your customers. Get with the dealer, demo some rackets and see what you really like, and try to get specific with not only the demo you want, but the type of string in the demo, which that can be a little tricky to negotiate, but get that right. And then you can really customize it to you.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I definitely really enjoyed, it's interesting with the Pure Aero 100, that one, it had so much power for me, and I felt like especially returns, it was so sweet. I felt like I could just pummel the ball, but I just needed a little bit more control. And as you mentioned, with that 98, you get a little bit more precision there. And I guess, what types of players do you think would want to string the racket with a poly, something like the RPM blast right here, versus using a multi-filament? And we'll talk about the Exalt string, which is a special type of multi-filament. What types of players should use what types of strings, do you think?
So we got a few layers there, right? So when we talk about head size in a racket, so you got head size. The smaller the head, the more control you get, right? The bigger the head, the more power. So that's what we're looking at. So with the 98, you get more maneuverability and more control. Now, part of what they do with 98 typically is they make them thinner. So a thinner beam will give you more feel and control, less power. Thicker beam is more about more response, stiffer response. Also in that 98, you have the pattern, the denser it is, the more control. Now, that's one element. The engine to your car is the string. So polyester string, super popular, right? But it's for spin and control. It's not a feel story, and it's not a power story. Yep. So RPM, RPM blast, which is, we've got a lot of tour use. Carlos is in that string. Arthur Fee's in that string. You've got Nadal in that string. Nadal and Scavone won French Open with RPM blast. That really kicked it off. Really popular. The RPM rough we talked about earlier, Felix Auger-Aliassime's in that. That would be a softer version of RPM. RPM's already a soft story. Rough is even softer with an indented to create more spin. They're 8-sided strings, so you create a poly to make it slip. If you make it 8-sided, there's less surface, it spins even more. And you can soften a poly, but you're still softening a stiff material. right? So multi-filaments are going to give you more comfort. They're going to give you better power, better tension maintenance, and be easier on your arm, right? Exalt is somewhere in between that. That's a tweaked multi-filament that it's a glass bead inlay that gives you some of the spin and control aspects of a poly, but it's a multi-filament that's stiffer versus trying to soften up a poly. So it's in that hybrid zone. In the past, when we've been on these podcasts, there's a lot of questions around hybrids because you're trying to marry those two elements of comfort, of tension maintenance, of power with the spin and control benefits of poly. Well, Exalt does that, whereas excels are multi-filament, which is very good for comfort and for power, but you're maybe swing a little harder, you want a little more control, but poly's too hard on your arm, it's too stiff. The Exalt gives you the softness of a multi, but with more spin and control. And that's the whole idea with product now, how it's being adapted to fit all those segments.
Mm-hmm. Allan, one thing that I found it's really unique, and that's why so ultimately I went to Babolat again. I did demo, I think I would say like 20 rackets, and because I was
Fantastic.
looking, because I was looking to switch from the Piero VS17, which you see there, and you and I were talking about the different choices and whatnot, and so. I would say that for me anyway, the Yonex V-Core was actually somewhat close, but it just didn't have that same feel in terms of the shaping of the ball. Like it had good spin, but not quite the control that I wanted, and just the feeling as well is different. And I just find like the way, and especially with the VS, the 16x20, it's very unique pattern, and just I'm able to shape it the way I want, and ultimately decided on for switching to the 98. But what is it with the Babolat frames, especially the Pure Aero and Puro 98, that gives you that easy spin? What happens what do they do with the racket to make it like produce that sort of feel?
In general, what makes a Babolat is the woofer system, which a grommet system has an elbow to it. So when the strings hit, they elongate better. So if you go to independent sites who test the sweet spot, you'll see Tennis Warehouse, that's at Tennis Warehouse University. You'll see the power levels outside the sweet spot are bigger for a Babolat because of that woofer system, which is really not new. Babolats, had their 30th year anniversary Pure Drive. It's 30 years into making rackets, but they were tuners and stringers on the Pro Tour before that, which is where they brought this know-how. Now, with the Aero, you're meant to get more launch angle, right? And the V-Core was trying to simulate that. And what we found with the connected racket, which Nadal and Wozniacki used, that players, when they hit topspin shots and serves, hit a little bit above the sweet spot. So looking at, a racket like this is a Pure Aero Rafa, right? The sweet spot when you hit is a little higher when you hit topspin shots and serve, right? So part of that's the grommet system where it's rounded. Second part you'll see here, I'm not sure if you can pick it up here. This is more than an elbow. But also it's the openness of the pattern. So 16x19 and 100 racket is now standard because Babolat was the innovator, and then other people came along and said it was doing well. So 100 square inch rackets with an open pattern are now more common, but Babolat has the open pattern with the woofer system, easy spin, easy power, because bigger sweet spot. So that's what's been nice about it. That's the value. Now, what we found with the computerized racket, the connected racket, is we've moved that sweet spot, that sweeter, higher, and opened the pattern up, which even gives you more spin. What you have in the 98 is a 16x20. The pattern's still fairly open because you're moving the last main swing is lower, but you still have the open pattern. But that more dense pattern gives you a little more control, but it also softens the racket. So 16x20 patterns in 98s have been very popular for that reason: control and softer racket. There's other things they do in terms of how they lay up the graphite that they don't tell me that whole story. Like a good cook, really to a great cook, the great cook doesn't really share all their secrets on layup, but they are changing things with layups too, right? So the new Pure Drive is the most controllable Pure Drive ever because over time they've refined it, right? So they're changing layup and giving it more control, especially as the game's got more powerful. That's why you see 98 so popular, because polyester strings allows you to swing faster and create power, but it's not only faster at the pro level, it's faster here at the level down. It's really incredible how hard these guys can hit 30, 40 times in a row. It's amazing. I was at an event in North Ranch Country Club and Sam Query was there, and we talked about how guys don't really roll the ball as high anymore. I said, well, Allan, when people try that, guys can hit winners off that. Clay, you'll see more of an arc because the ball bounces higher, but hardcore, you don't really see a lot of arc. Most of those guys are really crushing pretty much everything they can. It's amazing.
Yeah. Crazy athletes and so fun to, try different gear and see what can help you. So, Allan, when somebody is going out to try rackets, which we've all established, you should just demo rackets. What are the different factors that they should be thinking about? Like, okay, I'm trying this racket. I should look for A, B, C, D, and E to figure out whether I should get this racket or whether it's in my top few.
The main thing is understand the variables you're working with so you can adapt it to what you like. And trust what you like. It's a little tricky with demos because string is 70% of the performance of the racket. So if you're a multi-filament user and you go in because you like the comfort and power of that, and then you go use a demo with polyester strings, you're not really getting the same experience. They don't really compare, right? So you want to make sure the type of string is what you normally use. You're going to use a multi if you want comfort, tension maintenance, power. You're going to use poly if you want spin and control and durability. So try to match those up. So that's A, pay attention to the string. Secondly, pay attention to grip size. Try to get something near your grip size. If you use an 1/8 and you're trying a 3/8, you're not really going to enjoy the experience. It's not going to fit you, right? In every manufacturer, you think it's uniform. It's not. The grip size, Babolat tend to run a little bigger. Some manufacturers run more square, like Babolat and Wilson.
Yeah.
Most head rackets, with the exception of the ones for Djokovic, run more rectangular. Prints are more rounded. And it's not a wrong or right. It's just how you set it up. And you'll feel the bevels. These are the bevels on the racket. If you look at some of the instructional videos that you're going to see where Marilyn Bond's done, they're going to tell you where your heel pad's hitting, where your knuckle should be. Right. And they're going to talk about the different bevel points. Well, how you set up the grip does that, right? Some will have flatter at the end. This is called the butt or the butt cap. Some will be flatter here. Some will be more raised. Again, that's manufacturer to manufacturer. And it's just what you like, right? And your shop can adapt some of that for you. They can tune some of that for you, but the grip is the grip. Get the grip size right, get the string right, and then understand the variables when you're talking about racket head size. Smaller racket head, more maneuverability and control, less power, less margin. The more you go up in head size, the more power, but the less maneuverability, less control. Part of that depends on how fast you swing and how fast the ball is coming at you, right? 98 is more popular because it's more maneuverable and I can take bigger swings and hit the ball earlier with control. Babolat's working on a new Pure Drive 98. Zhang is a new young player from Babolat on the tour using the Pure Drive 98. He had a 4-hour match yesterday that he won in a tiebreaker, which is incredible. Yeah. And he's going to be exciting. And caveat, there's a new Pure Drive coming out in 2025. They reworked that 98 a lot to improve its stability and control and feel, because that's what that player's looking for at that high swing speed.
Yeah, great stuff. Yeah, that was
going to have to pretend I didn't tell you that on the podcast. You look surprised when I tell you that when I show you the product. So we literally just came back from our sales meeting that we were done in Club Med and Ixtapa down to Mexico, which was fun.
Awesome.
So that comes out in 2025.
Thanks for the scoop there, Allan. Love to hear that stuff.
So understand head size, how it's strong, get your grip right. And again, you're working with your dealer to talk to them about help them understand your game and help to adapt it. And this changes over time. If your level goes up, you might move from a multi-filament to a hybrid or something like Exalt, or you really start breaking strings a lot. You need the control of a polyester, but you got to adapt that, because you're not going to string polyester as tight as you string multi, because since it's a stiffer material, if you string it too tight, there's a potential for you to hurt your arm because it's stiffer. It won't absorb the shock as much. With the rackets, you're also looking at the beam width, right? So head size creates power, beam width creates power, right? So that's a thicker beam width. And this construction's elliptical, which means it's thicker than it looks because it's like an airplane wing. So it's going to cut the air faster, but be stiffer. You say, how does that vary? Well, this would be more of a hybrid frame, right? You see it's a little bit like that, but you see some square parts. Anything that's, back in the day, all the rackets were a box frame, i.e. squared. And that square gave you a lot of flex, but not much power, wasn't as maneuverable. So these kind of hybrid frames are a nice alternative. Notice it's a thinner beam, more feel and control. Like this is pretty much the same spec as your Pure Aero 98, but then Pure Aero 98 is not hybrid, it's rounded, i.e. elliptical. So it's a little more powerful than this would be, but it still gives you that feel and control.
Mm-hmm.
So last factor is weight. So weight, so you take a racket like a Pure Aero, we make it 3 weights. The more weight you get, the more power you get, the less maneuverability. That's your trade-off. You're finding the right weight you like. So we make a lightweight, we make a team, we make a regular weight. And other manufacturers have followed suit because, again, it's more adaptive what you like. You use a racket, you're finding you're having trouble getting to impact. It's too heavy for you. Now, if you can swing it, you get the benefit of power and control because you got more mass for stability at impact, but more mass for power. But, you would think the team weight, that in-between weight, wouldn't be that popular, but amazingly, it's very popular because it fits that 3-5-4-0 player quite well. I mean, core weights have gone lighter because you can make the beam width thicker and get the power, but add the maneuverability.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Alan. And so I'm itching to get my racket with the strings in, so I'm going to do that. But I'm going to ask this question first, and while you answer, I'm going to grab it from that beautiful bag back there, the 12-pack Rafa. So Yolanda asks, "Is Dick's Sporting Good a good place to start if you're new to the game?"
There's a few levels of sporting good chains, right? You start out with more entry-level sporting goods stores. Dick's Sporting Goods is a little different because they offer not just your entry-level product, but some mid and upper-level product. That's what's really good. Their selection and display is excellent. What you get more if you go into tennis specialty is you get a more customized situation where that's all that they do. They're not selling in departments. They sell racket sports. So they'll have the shoes, they'll have a more of a breadth of knowledge and selection than you'll see some. But, Dick's does a great job in their beautiful facilities to go into. They offer a huge range of product. But developing a relationship with your local tennis retailer, if you're really wanting to grow and activate in the sport and play more frequently, is better. A one-time purchase, that's different. It's not a long-term relationship, but as you grow, you want to go to someone who has some more consistent knowledge. I mean, these people literally spent their lives. I mean, like myself, I know I don't look that old, but I've been in the tennis business a long time, and that's what you want. That's part of the reason why I wanted to be at Sweet Spot here, to connect this process not only to, if you're in Southern California, this is one local retailer you can come to that really does a great job, but in your local area, find a place to support. I mean, you can buy a racket online, but they can't really restring it for you, and they can't give you specific understanding to you. They do a great job. All these retailers are a great source of information and product review. But if you want to personalize and adapt and spend some time with people, they can do it. But it's nice to have an in-store experience too. I thought with COVID, things would change, like people would all go online, but that didn't really happen. People, I think, want the in-store experience.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. I
funny,
totally agree
I'm
with
in
it.
Irvine and my wife was like, hey, my friend came up from San Diego. We want to go to Bass, I think it's
Pro
sports
shop.
shops. And it's like, that's like the Disneyland of like outdoor sports because they
Yeah.
want an in-store experience. I mean, you can get lost in there. So,
Yeah.
don't go there unless you got a couple hours. But that's what you get when you come into a tennis retail. You get a wide spread of not only the product, but of the retail experience in passion, because tennis retail is it's a tough business. It's a great business, but you're in it because you love it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Perfect person to help you with your tennis game. Just got some comments and questions here. Gordon, hey Gordon, agree dampener affects sound more than vibration. Hmm.
Yeah, I
Let's
mean, the problem is they're called vibration dampeners. So in that name, like you think it's making it easier on your arm, but it's really the string and string tension, right? We didn't talk too much about string tension, but the higher I string, the more control I get. The lower I go, the more power, right? A lot of times you'll see the pros who are doing a one-time use string job. It's not like you or I were going to keep our string job for a while. They'll string lower with a polyester string to create more string movement and give a little more elasticity to a stiffer string. But you just got to be careful. If you change materials, you might have to make an adjustment in tension.
right, right, 100%. And I know we have some questions about the tension as well coming down the pike here. But Yolanda, how much should I expect to spend on a good racket?
Well, that's where it's adaptive, right? I mean, I think, it's part of it depends on where you set your budget. You've got typically when you're buying pre-strung rackets, they're at a good build quality, but not great. You kind of go good, better, best, right? So
Yeah,
good level, you're around 120. Better level, you're about 159, 169. Best level, you're 230 to 250, right?
right,
So, that's gone up a little bit over time. What you gain when you go up is typically the top end is going to give you better feel and control for the ball. In the intermediate segment, you're going to get more ease of power, usually a bigger head, usually a more open pattern, but a lot of vibration damping, which is good, but you lose feel for the ball. There's always a trade-off when you do that. You open the pattern up, it's easier to play with, but you have less control. So if you're really swinging fast, that might be a problem. Now, some of the top end product is adapted for even intermediate play because it's lighter.
right.
Right. So as you advance, you typically would go up in weight, not for sure. It's all adapted to what you like.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Thanks, Alan. Let's see. Gordon used to have terms with Babolat, but found most frames too light. Thoughts on use of lead weight to increase power and larger head. And I know you all have some pro frames as well, like the heavier ones, like a heavier arrow. But anyways, feel free to go for this one, Alan.
I mean, weights used to be heavier. There was a really famous pro who's now retired. They had a special edition racket for him. And it was his weight that he really liked. It was the most returned racket at Tennis Warehouse because most people couldn't swing it, right? It was just too heavy. Now, it's interesting, not to lead and promote Babolat product, but I'm a sales guy.
Yeah, fair.
So the other trend in rackets, so I'm going to talk about this two ways. So this is pure Al Rafa origin. Now, understand, I'm going to get your comments. Hey, Rafa's not playing with this racket right now. I know. I've seen him. He went back to the old one because he won his last French Open with it. But basically, it's the same paint job for this. This is a player spec racket. So what does that mean? To his point, this racket is 11.2 ounces. And we used to make a pure Aero Tour, same weight, but it was 11 points headlight. Because typically when you make a racket heavier, you change the balance of the racket to make it easier to swing because it has mass already. A lighter racket, you move weight to the head, so you don't have a light racket that doesn't have any weight in the head, no power. So that's the balance. This is his spec, only 4 points headlight. But this is Rafa. You've seen his biceps. He's a beast. But for the player who can swing at that level, there you are. Now, also what you get with this is less vibration dampening and a denser pattern. Denser pattern, more control. Less vibration dampening, feel and control. Heavier weight, more head in the head. That's a player spec racket. This is a trend you're going to see. Babolat started first, and now other manufacturers you see will follow suit. It's cool because here in Southern California, we like cars, right? This is, you want to see the latest, whatever, Lamborghini, Ferrari, classic car. You'll see it here. They all have fancy paint jobs. This is a fancy paint job he picked. I'm not going to tell you what would happen to me in high school if I wore this pink color, but I'm just telling you it's bold. Now, what's underneath this? So you like the origin, but it's too much for you. We make a Pure Aero Rafa, so it's the same racket, but more of a team spec, i.e. 10-1 spec. It has that same feel, but it's a more open pattern, easier to play with, easy spin, lighter weight, easier to swing. So you're a good level player, you like Rafa, but that's too heavy, you can use this. You know, and that's what Babolat does with the whole line. You like Carlos, but 98's too much, but the 100 works great. Or you need a lighter weight, there you are. You know, what's going to be happening with the Pure Aero 98 is eventually we'll have it in a grip size 1 because, you know, Carlos Alcaraz is an influencer. He's a dynamic personality. And I think, you know, some of the young people who can swing a 98, that's 10.8 ounces, you know, that would be a good racket for them. And we want to make sure they have a grip size that fits their hand. And racket grips are going down, right? The grip sizes people use. Federer and Nadal are pretty tall guys. They use size 2, which before, you know, everyone back in the 80s, 90s wanted a bigger grip. But with the way swings have changed, with the more the racket coming through, grips have gone smaller.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I've seen that. Does Rafa does he use like a couple over grips? I don't know. I forget if
he used an overgrip. He uses the VS overgrip, only in white, only in the 3-pack.
Gotcha.
I'm not telling you he's particular, but you've seen the way he organizes his bottles. He's a tennis player like all of us. We have our certain things that we like, you know, and he uses custom damp on his racket too, but he's in the VS grip, which let's make that transition to grips. So you can replace your grip when it wears out, but if this is your chassis, if this is your engine, these are your tires. So when I used to teach, I would go crazy because people would come with their racket and would look like the dog had just chewed on their grip. It would drive me crazy. Because the problem is if your grip wears out, on a replacement grip, you can kind of see it because you'll see the inside, you'll start to see fibers. It won't be the black color anymore. You can't grip as well. You might get a blister, but you don't have as good grip. I mean, you would never let your Porsche tires wear out because it won't perform the same way. So you can either replace the grip or you can put over grips on. Most people do over grips, but it depends what you like. If I put an over grip on, it makes the grip a little bigger. Not so much with the VS because it's a thinner grip, but if I put that grip on, I get, you know, kind of a retread for my handle. The VS is thin and it's more around absorbing. So if you sweat a lot, you'll use a more absorbent over grip. In Southern Cal, where it's not as humid as other places, we sell more tacky over grips because people want the tacky surface for better grip. But it really is up to you and how much you sweat.
Yeah, I really like the
so replace your grips, replace your swing. Yep.
I like this one a lot.
Literally,
Actually,
that's the grip I've been asking for with Babolat for 10 years because it's a super tacky over grip that actually gets a little tackier with use. That's popular for my region. Again, I can only speak to my region, and I'm just telling you its benefits. You might sweat a lot and go, wow, that tacky grip, not so much. I want something that's absorbent. Or you might say, I love it. Right. So it's interesting, you know, there was another manufacturer who made overgrips and their tackiest overgrip was white and their most absorbent was black. And then you went on a color spectrum, you got more absorbent as you got towards black. This is why we have white overgrips. White overgrips are the reason why I wear mostly black. And first and foremost, I eat in my car, so if I spill, no one can tell. Yeah, that's one. But white over grips, the dirt from your hand, the oils from your hand, it's going to make the grip dirty quick. But this is why this manufacturer made these tacky over grips were so popular. All the manufacturers make white over grips now, even though it kind of doesn't make sense, but it is easier to with that color to make it tacky. It's like we only have one color in the Pro Tour because they're like, Allan, because I'm asking, why don't we have other grips? It's, well, this is the tackiest at this color. And I'm going to tangent for a second here. The same thing's true with polyester strings. So when you color a polyester string, it plays different. In stringing and string information is a little bit like nutrition. Some of it's accurate, some of it's, made up, but it's definitely true. I mean, we have RPM rough, and the different colors play differently. Typically, as you go a little darker, it plays a little differently, sometimes softer, sometimes stiffer, right? And I get comments, we have a natural gut that's natural, but we also make a black color. Some people feel like the black color's softer, even though it's just a coating on the outside of the string that we put, a pigment in the coating. That's it.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So fun to analyze these things and pick the right one for you. Let's see what else we got here. Okay. Gordon, Babolat XL, a wonderful string. RPM blasts very hard on the arm. Thoughts on that?
So XL, we're talking about benefits, drawbacks. So XL is a really soft multi-filament. So it's going to give you power. It's going to give you comfort. And it's going to give you tension maintenance. It's a multi-filament. The highest grade of comfort strings is natural gut. So a natural gut after 20 hours of use will lose maybe 5-10% of its tension. Multi-filaments, depending, it's 11 to 20. When you go to polyester, after 20 hours of use, you've lost half your tension. Now, you're not going to notice the loss as much because it's not a power story. It's a control and spin story. So typically, if you use a polyester string, you're using it for control, spin, and durability. It has a higher burn rate and it slips better at impact for spin. But it's stiffer. Even though you can make it soft, you're still softening up a stiff material. And that's what's happened in the industry. You're adding different elements to soften it up. But understand advantage drawbacks. It will be stiffer on your arm. So if you say, Allan, I really want that spin and control, but it's a little hard on my arm, adjust your string tension down, right? It's hard because you're adjusting two elements. So that makes that conversation a little harder because you're trying to figure out two things at one time, and that's tricky with string. But pay attention to that. Back in the day, you really only had the multi-filaments and gut, and so Borg or Sampras strung the rackets super tight because they wanted a really stiff surface, and there was no other way. Pete Sampras now uses RPM. He calls it cheating, but he wanted that surface.
Yeah. Pretty cool developments there.
But this is how you're adapting, right? What I like about what I've learned with Babolat as a product producer, they're saying this is the element, but it's not a one size fits all. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about string. Excel is going to give you great playability and comfort, gut even better, right? Takes a month to make a set of gut. I've been to the gut factory, which is in kind of southern France. It's in Plurimel, and they got to go to where the cows are, and it takes an intestine and a half of a cow to make it, and it takes a month.
Yeah. Oof.
So it's a very tricky process because it's all handmade, and that's what's so interesting about all this product we talk about. It doesn't really get punched out of the machine. The layups for a racket, they have to do all the layups, all hand done. I've been, with Babolat, they've been nice to me. We've gone to the factories, which most of the manufacturers make in China. That's different. Yonex is in Japan. And you have these people laying it up, and then, it gets put around a tube, and they've got to put it in a kiln and then heat it up in the mold that's made for it.
Super interesting process. Yeah, let's see. A ton of questions here still, Alan. Let's see. What do you think of string hybrids? What should one look for in a main versus cross string? Great question.
Great question. And it's funny, right? Exalt, which we talked about earlier, was kind of a response to what you have in a hybrid. You have two competing materials. Thank you for that plug. That's very good of you.
No problem.
Whatever you put on your main, this is your main reactor. So if I put polyester here and I put the softer string on the cross, I get more spin and control, but I get some of the softness and tension maintenance benefits of the multi here. If I flip it, I get more power and control, but I get some of the durability and spin control here, right? The pros either string polyester, typically looser, or they do gut hybrids, typically with the poly on the main. Not always, but that's typically it. And you won't always notice it, right? Because we do a hybrid that's black gut and black RPM, so it looks like the same string.
Right. Yeah.
Some pros like Nadal are being like, I'm using RPM. He since went down in gauge, but I'm using RPM at this tension wherever I'm at. Other pros will change string and string material on the surface and then where they're at, because altitude, the ball goes faster. We're in Colorado, and the home office in Colorado. I'm in Southern California. That's very fast. You got to string tighter there because the air is thinner. But if the air is thicker, or if you're at sea level, you need more power. If you're playing on clay, you might string a little looser for power.
Mm-hmm.
Some guys like, Federer would go a lot of times hybrid, but at Wimbledon, he would be all gut because he wanted the response. Tsonga, same thing. He changed his string and string tension a lot because he played around with those elements. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about string a little bit more.
Yeah.
And this is where string is super confusing in this sense. Let's talk about string gauge. So it's a plumber's measurement. So if I say 18 gauge, that's actually thinner. You would think the opposite, but it's how many can fit within this plumber's measurement. So 18's thinnest, 17's a little thinner, 16's kind of a standard durability gauge, 15's the thickest, right? Nadal switched from 15 to 16 because if I go thicker, I get more control, more durability, but I get a little less string movement, a little less power. I mean, with poly, it's a little less, but you're fine-tuning what you like. If you're using polyester, you're not breaking a lot, go thinner gauge. You'll get a little more spin. It'll be a little easier on your arm, and you're good to go. You could even go thinner. Some manufacturers even went to 19. You might be splitting hairs a little too much there, but there you are. There's the case for it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I used to play with 16, and now I've shifted slightly thinner to 17, and I definitely feel the increased playability a bit, so it's nice, a little more comfortable as well. And it's very interesting too. I remember many years ago I was playing with a different string, and it was so funny to me that, I tried the 16 and it actually hurt my arm. I went to 17, I felt like I didn't have enough control, like my balls were flying, but they actually had a 16L, and that particular measurement like was the perfect sweet spot. So it's you would kind of maybe,
I mean, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, so you got to be, it makes a difference, like, different gauges. So definitely fun to
Well,
experiment.
part of the reason you're on this and whoever's listening, you're on this is you want to adapt it to how you play. I mean, and knowing the elements and figuring out for you, it's your hand. This is your extended hand, right? I can tell you the elements. I can't tell you what's exactly right for you, which is what I appreciate about the training I've had and why we want to get you into a specialized experience if you want to adapt to that level, right? There's a lot of places you can buy, but creating that long-term relationship and being with someone who can grow with you as your game grows, let's go. That's fun. And the game will continue to change. I mean, I'm only telling you, I traveled with Lucien Nogues, who's strung at 600 tournaments, 60 Grand Slam tournaments, which is the marquee tournaments for tennis. We would go talk about string, and he would say, well, this is how I currently understand it. And he's forgotten more than, I know. I mean, he's amazing, right? Because he's at the pro level, tuning rackets for pros and doing that work, which is wow, it's cool. So it will keep changing, and being with that person on the cutting edge will help you.
Yeah, 100%. Including if you're near Burbank, California, check out Sweet Spot Tennis. Very cool shop with all the gear behind Allan and Rackets. Let's see here. We have, uh, okay, we kind of covered it, but Allan's thoughts on string tension for maximum power. I guess Adrian Manarino is an outlier, but great Babolat ambassador.
Great. I mean, he strings. Last I heard, it was 26 pounds with poly. He uses kind of like the Origin, kind of a heavier weight arrow, and strings it super loose. Now, part of it is Adrian's ability not only to create power, to absorb power. He's lefty. He's got a great serve, but his ability to absorb power is crazy good. So, but Jack Sock was, when he's on the tour, I know he's now switched to pickle, but like to string poly pretty loose because you get more movement and you get some of that. So you get more string movement, more control, but you get a more reactive string too, i.e. power. And you're finding that control because what you're figuring out, and this is why this is such a great question, is you're figuring out the most powerful setup you can create power with, but also the power you can control. Same thing with the racket. The reason why 98s have got more power is because the game's just faster. It's crazy. Like if you go back and you look at 80s, 90s, and you look at them play, the ball looks so slow. They weren't hitting slow, but if you look at it real time, and if you see now, they're giving you some better views, but when they give you ground level view, because they have the camera there behind it, you see that ball looks like they're hitting Super Bowl. When you're above here, you don't really see how it's jumping and moving through the court, which that's a lot of time the camera angle, but when you see it ground level, it's incredible, right? And these guys are hitting max power and still running down every ball. It's really, that's why you're seeing even now demands of the tour and what they're asking. You might see a little bit of a reduction in the schedule because it's so demanding, the sport, because of the speed and the power they hit at is amazing.
Yeah, it truly is. What a great sport. Let's see. Gordon, fascinating that string is 70%. And agree, Babolat originally known for gut, but who uses gut now? So I think you mentioned several use it as
Pros,
hybrid.
Federer used it,
Yeah.
Babolat. Now I can't really mention too. I mean, Djokovic a lot of times hybrids. A lot of the manufacturers buy the gut from Babolat for their pros, right? Who use gut, because you're going to use gut because you want the feel of it. Like the pros typically are going to hybrid it. Not a lot of all gut users. Lee Na, Kleisers were. Most of them are hybriding with the poly to get that better feel and power, right? And get that hybrid sensation. And the reason, the tricky part of gut is you got to get the coating right. And I would ask them like, hey, why don't you just put polyester in gut, right? Because you can get a more durable product. They said, Allan, the problem is it will only stretch to the stiffest material. So if you put something too stiff in it, well, now you put a polyester in there. Now you stiffened it. It's too stiff. Now, that's why getting the coating right is key. There's other gut manufacturers, but they haven't really got the twisting and drying process. And I don't understand this perfectly because they won't tell me everything. You got to get the coating right. You got to twist and dry it right. Babolat, probably, my memory's not as good as it used to be. It's kind of an age thing. About 7 or 8 years ago, they changed not how many filaments were, but they made them thicker in the layup to make it last a little longer and play with a little more control, because that was the demand of the market. But it's still that. That's what you see with gut. And gut's fantastic. If you want feel and control and you don't break your strings a lot, I would use gut if you can afford it, right? Gut is fairly reactive, right? So we do have a special coating, so it's good in weather. If you play in a lot of damper areas, I wouldn't recommend as much because once you break that coating, it is porous, it's natural. So you'll lose some of the benefits. It will puff up if you're really playing in rainy and wet conditions. If you're not playing in wet conditions, you're good to go. right? So that would be my only caveat to it. Multi-filaments, you don't have to worry about that because it's not a porous material like that.
Yeah, good insight per usual. Alan, let's see what else we got. Jerry, although expensive, why would I? Well, kind of covered it. Why would I buy natural gut string? Advantages, disadvantages, go mixed
Well, it's
string.
kind of
So,
that. Well, I mean, it's using natural gut, and don't take this the wrong way. Hopefully, my wife's not listening. Using natural gut is like when I take my wife to a nice restaurant. You know what I tell her? Do not get used to it.
yeah.
Because once you do it, there you go. Now, in the same thing, I'm going to get personal with you.
Okay.
If you started stringing your rackets on an electric stringer and felt that the better tension maintenance and feel that you get from that, you probably won't be stringing on that electric stringer. That's very 1980s of you. Okay. But the mounting system and the way it pulls, I mean, back in the day, I worked at a club and we did the national wheelchair tournament, and the Europeans would come over and we were on crank machines. The Europeans don't even have crank machines. They don't even know what that is. Babolat actually started the electric machine because they were stringing with the Pro Tour, and as innovators, they created the electronic machine. An electronic machine strings 10% tighter. So what you've got to be careful about if your stringer is stringing on a crank machine and then you go somewhere else and you need your racket restrung, you got to adjust your tension 10%. So be aware of the stringing machine you're on, because 10% is a lot. Basically, typically 5 pounds, right? 5 to 6 pounds if you string around 60 pounds. But keep that in mind. The stringing machine makes a difference too. Also, the mounting system, there's more mounts on an electric machine, so that's better for your racket, because the hardest thing you do to racket is string it, because it's unbalanced, right? The pressure on your racket is unbalanced when you're stringing. So a good stringer will only string so many mains at a time and go back and forth. If I do all the mains at one time, now I've got a lot of pressure just on one side. So having a pro stringer, they do it right.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad I'm doing that part right. At least I alternate with the mains. But yeah, maybe I should get an electronic machine. Gordon Tanner, gut excellent if suffering from arm pain, and excel great multifilament, although Technifiber biphase closer to gut. Interesting.
Yeah, Technifiber is known for their multi-filament use along with Babolat. Babolat makes their multi-filaments in Lyon, which is where their factory is. They do an addiction and the Excel, but Technifiber's been an innovator in that space too, right?
Made in France.
Yeah, that's Exalt, which is more like you want more control out of your multi-filament. That's why you'd use that. It's not for everyone. It's for that user who likes the multi, but wants to bridge the gap and get some of the benefits of poly without hurting their arm.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited to try the Exalt myself. I guess so. If I try Exalt, I would probably want to string it a few pounds tighter than Allan. You think? Than
A
the
few
RPM
pounds
Black?
tighter. I don't like to change too many elements at once, but yes, you'd probably
Okay.
want to be at, what do you normally string at?
I just changed to 50. I was doing 51. Just slight change. 50 on the
Right.
crank.
Right, on the crank. So that's really like 45,
45?
which is what a lot of pros string at, right?
Mm.
And then, and again, you say, Allan, I'm committed to polyester. I love the spin benefits. That's fine. Polyester is really made for someone who breaks strings in 8 hours. That's maybe 1% of the market. Just be willing to burn that string after a while, because you're going to feel a loss of control, but you only feel that's, you feel it over time. And part of your process when you're adapting your string is do a little string log on your phone. I really liked it day 1, or I didn't like it. It's too stiff. And then over time, day 7, day 12, I liked it better. You just do a little note, and then maybe you start a little looser because that's better for you.
Yeah, great point, Allan. From my experience lately, and I have been guilty of keeping my poly in for too long, and then it plays terribly at the end. I mean, just natural, right? But the first day, maybe day and a half, it's a bit slightly too tight, and then for the next few days, it's really nice. I like it a lot. But then, I hit that point after several days where it's like too loose, balls are flying, and also my feel is like severely diminished. And then, you know, eventually it breaks. But like these days I've been cutting it out, just like, you know, it's not worth it to,
And I think
you
it's a
know.
better choice. You know, what you
Yeah.
see at the pro level is that the pros, it started really with Ivan Lendl, who was very technical and really an innovator in the game in terms of technique and fitness, but also what he did, you know, he had balls with stringless rackets. They come in the fancy plastic, you know, you take them out. But he started to change his rackets with the ball change. Watch these guys, they're changing. During the match, you'll see them on changes. Hey, here's my racket, restring my racket when they're playing the match. These poor stringers who they got to string these rackets in 10, 15 minutes. That's pressure. Believe me, I don't know how they do it, but whatever. They change with the ball change because at that level, they hit so fast. So at a pro level, warm up, and then after warm up, after 7 games, they give you new balls. After that, it's every 9 because they're including the warm up. So typically, the pros change with the ball change because the balls are faster themselves because they didn't get fluffed up by hitting all that power and spin on them. And the rackets have gone soft. So the ball's faster, but also the racket went a little softer. So if they don't make the change with the new ball, they've lost a little bit of control. And when you're playing for hundreds and thousands of dollars, it's just like a race car driver. What are you doing? You're putting on new tires every few laps because you lost grip. And that little bit of difference is all the difference at the pro level. At our level, we can take that out more macro, right? Just after a while, if you haven't broken it, there you go. And part of the concern is, right, you're 20, 25-year-old teaching pro who's concerned about durability and longevity, and his arm can take it. There you go. I mean, as an older gentleman, when I work out, I got to be careful because if I overdo it, it might take a little while for my body to recover. And when I was 25, I just run around a little bit and I'm fine. So just listen to your body, react to it because you want to adapt what you're doing to how you play. And that's one of the reasons why I like Exalt. I'm, you know, a good player, but the polyester strings are just a little too much for me. I can go to a multi-filler or something like Exalt or a hybrid and go into it. I mean, we talked in the past, hybrid has been popular because you get kind of the best of both worlds. Now, one of the questions that's a key element we haven't talked about today, what is it? What is another key part that we haven't talked about? And it's not that fancy bag that's behind you, by the way. It's fully waterproof, by the way, that Rafa bag. You know what it is?
Footwear.
Footwear.
Hey.
We did not plan this, by the way.
We didn't plan that.
But it's funny because
well done.
This is Rafa spec shoe. It matches Racket. That's one side. That's the other side.
Right.
It's kind of fun. But let's just talk for a moment about footwear and how it's adapted. Footwear is different because you're going to know if it's right for you, but you won't necessarily know why. It's like wearing apparel. You'll know something's cut right, but you're not going to be like, wow, I really like this, you know, 5.5 inch seam on my shorts. You're not going to know what that is unless you're that level. But you basically got 3 categories you're looking for to adapt footwear to what you like. This used to be the only category, this and a value story. So this story is the durability support story. You can see the side rails. You can see the thicker rubber. This is about support and durability. I'm a hard mover, right? Mm-hmm. Every shoe has to be at once comfortable. Like Babolat's done footwear testing in Southern Cal. Every shoe has to fit where it doesn't hurt your foot, at once comfortable. Dampening in the, you know, this big EVA dampening, it's for sure what you want. Now, what you see with this shoe that's adapted is a little firmer EVA here where you hit your heel and a little softer EVA where you toe off. But basically, it's got to be at once comfortable. So cushioning, it's a no-brainer across all categories. Some will be softer cushioning than others, but this is your hard mover, durability, and support. Bigger side rails, thicker shoe, right? You can see this in adapted sole. I'm not sure if you can see it, where it's thicker where you wear and thinner where you don't. So it's more durable, but it's not necessarily as heavy as it used to be because it's been adapted, right? But
Yeah.
that's a different user. They're a hard mover, right? So that's one player. You say, what's the other type of player? So hopefully we had a just for glare earlier. You're not ready for this shoe color. Get ready. Here it is.
Uh-oh. Oh.
This matches a new Pierce, right? This
Uh-huh.
is the Jet Mach 3. So this is your lightweight story, right? So this is going to seem ironic that I say this, but tennis was very fortunate that ASICS came into the footwear manufacturing because ASICS is a billion-dollar footwear company that brought in the idea of really well-cushioned shoes that were lighter weight. And we had a market that said, wait a second, maybe I just don't want the most durable product. I could benefit from a lighter weight, sticky shoe that gave me lightweight performance, and I'm okay if it doesn't last as long. You know, all shoes are somewhat adaptive. You can see this is a lightweight, still very, you know, this upper has a matrix upper with, you know, durability in it. The matrix upper has some support systems in it that give you lightweight, but it's still supportive. We make this with the French military company that's basically makes bulletproof vests. So it's very lightweight, but supportive, but you get, you know, your faster ball, but you get the sticky surface. Notice same thing where it's thicker where you wear and lighter where you don't. Like on the other shoe, it's cut into different sections so it can flex better with your foot. It's going to move like your foot does. Same thing, firmer EVA here, softer here. A lightweight story. So you've got durability support. That's one F. This is lightweight support.
Yeah.
This is comfort. So comfort's more of a deal in width, right? So when you fit a shoe, you're trying to get the right length, the right width. So width will vary. D is typical. This shoe is between a D and an E. We actually make this shoe in a double E because if you run wider, you run wider. You got to find the right width for your foot. A lot of people, I'm different. I run narrow, but a lot of people in the US market run a little wider. So this shoe works great for that. This is a high amount of comfort and it has that width story, right? So the last thing you're trying to feel with your shoe is length, width, and upper volume. All of these shoes have good support through the arch because that's important for stability, along with comfort here. But that's what you're looking for. So you're trying to find the right length, the right width, and the right, you know, emphasis for you. Do you want comfort? Do you want lightweight? Do you want durability? You know, all of them have to have at-once comfort, but some are even softer EVAs than others. This has a thicker inner sole than the other shoes, which will give you part of that comfort. It's thicker through here. That's the inner sole, right? You know, upper and upper volume is something that you'll feel, but you don't know. But trust your instincts are that. Wow, I kind of feel what they call a hot spot here. It's hurting my foot there when I walk around the store. Well, don't go with that. Get a shoe that fits you right. You want about a finger length width in your forefoot. You want stopping power. Different than in Southern California, where we all drive too close to each other on the freeway. You want to leave some room to stop. If you're right-handed, typically your left foot will be a little longer and you want to adjust for the left first and the right. It's other way if you're left-handed. That's typically it. It's not fully universal, but mostly. But pay attention to that. I mean, I was a teaching pro. My feet are hurting me. I'm trying all these orthotics. I go to my podiatrist. I said, well, you're wearing a 10. You're not a 10 and a half. You're not 11. You're an 11 and a half. Wow. Your foot can grow with time. Okay. So understand that. Just pay attention to that. It could grow, could get wider, could get longer. So adapt what you're wearing to how things change.
Yeah, 100%.
So think about those stories, right? You want to properly, you know, segment what you're buying, just like you do with rackets, what you do with string choices, what you do with grip choices and grip shape, right? You know, now, you know, grip shape, typically they say leave a little room for your finger there, you know, so it fits right, but adapt that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, Alan. And yeah, I just wanted to mention my experience with the product. And again, obviously full disclosure, as I mentioned earlier, that Babolat and Allan were kind enough to send me these products, and I love Babolat. And I remember trying this shoe few years ago, and as you mentioned, Allan, it was definitely heavier, still good support, but heavier. But what I really appreciate about this shoe is I actually have been struggling a bit with plantar fasciitis, and they said one of the biggest causes of this is if the toe box area is too narrow, which a lot of shoes they kind of like go narrow as they go in. I don't know if I'm doing it right,
Yeah.
but this one is quite nice and wide in the toe area, and I just found my feet being able to actually be more flat, the toes, and spread the load, and I really appreciated that. And I found that it has a good level of cushioning, like not too much, but just like a good amount. And so you still have good feel on the court, and like very comfortable. I didn't even put my heel insert in yesterday, actually, and I was playing some singles with my friend Kate, who's a great player, but felt really comfortable around the court. I mean, I love the colorway, like it's so cool as well, matches with the bag. But yeah, I and it's lighter, it's, as I mentioned, so I was really impressed by this newer iteration of the Propulse Fury 3. And so yeah, I like it a lot. I like the width. One of the big causes of my uh leg pain was just like using shoes that were too narrow. So this is nice. I like it a lot, and I'm a support shoe person, so yeah, this is a great one for me.
Product makes a difference, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and your product needs can change over time as long, and if you understand the variables and you can work with an expert who understands what's out there, what your choices are, it's great. And you have that online, but you've got some local retailers who have some real personal experience with it too, and typically have been in the business for a long time. It's that the wealth of experience, you want to use it to your advantage.
Yeah, definitely. I always enjoy, I have a couple local shops here. I've built really good relationships with. I'm on the board, local tennis board with one of them, and it's always just a pleasure to go in there and talk tennis and really build that rapport. And then, to be able to help with product. And as you mentioned too, like with the stringing situation, sometimes you can kind of negotiate a bit better. Like if you use a certain string, maybe they'll be nice enough to let you use the string, because the policies of the online retailers, which again they're great and convenient, but they don't let you like string it with some other string when you're demoing, for example. So yeah, it's nice. And as we mentioned, Sweet Spot Tennis in Burbank, California, definitely want to check that out if you're nearby, or just drive a little bit. And it's funny, Allan, you mentioned all the driving and the cool cars, because I was talking on the phone with my best friend who lives in LA and was driving to Malibu, and yeah, he
Oh my
took a picture
gosh,
of us.
Malibu is
Yeah,
beautiful. You're going to drive
yeah,
that
yeah.
coastline. You're like, wait a second, I saw that on a movie, because you did. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. He lives in Rancho Palos Verdes, actually, which is also really nice. And yeah, he took a picture of an R8 for me. So I'm just going on a tangent, but it's just, you're talking about the cars, and he has a Porsche himself, and he loves it. But
Oh my
speaking of
gosh,
Porsche,
yeah.
yeah, he loves it. But yeah, speaking of
Well,
Porsches, I
and
mean,
that's
yeah, sorry,
and
go ahead.
that's really part of what I think Babolat's done well. I mean, the French really think a lot, Europeans really think a lot about their customer and who it is. And, in the Babolat line, the Porsche 911 of the line is really the pure drive. It all started with that. It's been, the 30th anniversary year is this model, right? So it's the 30th anniversary of the pure drive, which is where it all started for Babolat. So this is all the different colors of the pure drive together. But Pure Drive is really our most adaptive product in terms of power and spin. When you go to Pure Aero, right, which is this color, but you can also see the yellow color back here. And then you go to Pure Strike, which is the most feel and control here. They're all spin stories. They're all big sweet spot stories, but they're properly adapted, which is cool, right? That's what you want. Now, it's funny. I just came back from sales meeting. So Babolat is going to do something in Padel. So in Padel, we don't really know Padel the same way as they would in Europe, because it's huge in Europe. For us, they're growing other racket sports. Pickleball is an example of pickleball product. Sweet Spot also has pickleball product like this. Padel is the growing sport. They're going to do Lamborghini, did a joint venture with Babolat, and it's going to do Padel. There'll be a whole special product, online special deal, but it does speak to them as innovator, though their engineers work together. And it's that whole idea about creating cool collaborations, right? That's part of the story that we didn't talk about as much, because what do you see there? Well, that's Michelin. Michelin is Michelin rubber, and their sole designs that Babolat works with, and they've been with Michelin from the very start of designing the shoes. They help with tread design because that's what they do. Rubber compounds, again, quality construction, all that. These collabs are super helpful, right? So, I mean, I'm just giving you a general overview of the Padel idea, but it just was a cool thing to do. Obviously, the cosmetics look great, will match up, but Padel is a growing sport for us in Southern California. Carson has some courts because the European soccer players play. Barnes Tennis Center just grew to 6 courts from 3.
Nice
you know,
place.
down in Mexico, it's growing. You know, Babolat's the #1 paddle company outside of Spain. So it's an exciting growth. They're really a racket sports development company, but these collabs are really fun to do.
Yeah, most definitely, Allan. Curious with these shoes. Do you have does Babolat make clay court versions of the shoes, or I mean, I assume
Absolutely.
they're. Oh, perfect. Okay,
Absolutely.
cool.
Now, in my region, we don't sell as much, right? We make
Yeah,
clay
hard
court
court.
shoes. We make shoes for padel, which is a different, more rounded, kind of almost like spikes on it for playing on the paddle courts, which typically are like an omni court with sand. The clay court shoe will be more of a herringbone, and it'll come more to a point. So we do those. It's weird for us, right, in Southern Cal, where most of the courts are hard courts. Really, in the world, most of the courts are clay.
True.
So clay court usage, as a French-owned family company, 5th generation, they sell a lot of clay court shoes. We don't sell as much, especially in Southern California. We don't have as much clay here because this region's not as adaptive to clay. It's drier here. But, Florida, you'll see more clay where it rains more. But it's a different sole because that sole forms a blade that cuts the clay better, but the clay will also fall out since it's like this. The clay will come in, will cut the clay, but also it won't stay in it. Whereas hard court, you typically want a sole that's a little firmer. This is an example of herringbone, but not to a blade, right?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I have a clay court shoe. Yeah, special clay court shoe just because I've tend to have, actually my government league is every Thursday on clay, green clay, hard true they call it, and got sectionals coming up for mixed 9-0 for clay. But yeah, it makes a difference. So that's very cool that you all have clay as well.
Well, it's
So that's awesome.
adaptive, right? Yeah, we got clay shoes. We do grass shoes. Obviously, that's more for England, right? Because it's a different sole. That's even more of a spike.
Yeah.
And again, Michelin helps us with those designs in the rubber compound.
Nice. Awesome. Great partnership there. Still got a bunch of questions if you have time, Allan. Let's see where
I've got as much time as you need.
Appreciate it, my friend. Awesome. Always get a lot of questions in this session. Jerry, I'm sorry, we already did that. Let's see. Okay, interesting one from John. What do you think about using fairway calfskin grips?
So
I'm not familiar with that.
It's fair. He's talking about leather grips.
Okay.
So we make only a couple rackets with leather grips. So this is called the Pure Strike 97. It's smallest head, almost a box frame beam, not quite, denser pattern, and it comes with a leather grip. So what's the advantage of leather grip? A is weight. So when you add leather, it's heavier than a synthetic grip. Your feel for the bevels, like we talked about, is better, right? Your grip on the racket isn't as good. If you're not used to leather and you go to leather, you're probably going to get blisters because it's just harder to grip. So a lot of guys use leather for the weight and the feel for the grip. But you gotta typically put an overwrap on it so you don't hurt your hand. Now, if you're used to it and you got the calluses, no problem. Most guys put an overwrap on, but you use leather for feel and for weight. You know, we were talking earlier about the Pure Strikes. This is a synthetic grip with less padding to it, so you feel the grip better.
Nice.
The player adapted racket, which has less dampening, I feel the ball better. The interesting thing, I remember like Mitsubishi was making these Evo cars, which were basically like an economy race car. Well, you really felt the road better, but the problem is an hour or two into that drive, you're feeling the road. Your back end is feeling the road. So that's your trade-off. When I go, beginning and intermediate rackets are more about comfort and ease of use. As you go up, you're looking more around feel and control. And there's a range to that, but this is around feel, right? Feel for your changes in the grip and for weight, which again gives you a more dynamic hit, more power.
Awesome. Great summarization there. Shreko says Pure Strike 100 is great. I heard a lot of great reviews about that because I think it's a great mix for players who they want that increased control, but they also still like maybe the 100. Like it's a good mix of power, it seems like, in control. I imagine that's a great seller for you.
It is. It was interesting, not to segue another product, but I'm like that. So this is a Pure Strike 100 16 by 20.
Oh yeah.
So we used to make the Pure Strike in a 16 by 19, 98, but we made a tour version, which was just heavier. Same racket, heavier, different balance. I'm sure they changed things with layup. They didn't tell us. What Babolat has got a better understanding with for this player who's using a thinner beam hybrid frame racket is they want better feel and control. This is our softest RA. So it's softer at the throat. And understand when we talk about RA, we're talking about stiffness at the throat. It's 1 of 14 flex points. You say, how about the other layups? They won't tell me, though I'm asking because I'm technical like that. How I laid up here makes a difference too. Like a Pure Drive and Pure Arrow, the Pure Arrow is a little bit firmer here, but softer at the tip and stiffer at the throat. Pure Drive stiffer at the tip. That's why Roddick loved it, because for serving, nothing serves like a Pure Drive. It's more responsive. So the new Pure Strike is softer in the throat. This is even a softer one, softer, heavier, denser pattern, more feel and control for that person who wants 100, but even more weight, softer. I'm taking big swings, but I want the power of 100, but I need the control by softening it up. The Pure Strike is 16 by 19. This is 16 by 20, and it's a little firmer, more response. It's adaptive to your use.
Yeah, I love the 1620. It's so nice.
I mean, it's really become popular.
Years. Yeah, I think I've been playing with that pattern for 7 years, something like that. Yeah. Great stuff. Let's see. Should rackets be replaced after a specific number of years, Allan?
So, like we were talking about earlier when we got to stringing, and I got personal with you, the hardest thing you do to a racket is string it. Typically, pros about every 3 months because they string a lot. So they have, 20, 30-minute use, rackets done. Some, every pro has a little different system, so I'm talking generally here. So it really depends how much you're playing and how much you're restringing. If you restring a lot, replace the racket, but pay attention to, this is why, again, when you want to go to a good stringer, to the head guard. If you hit the ground a lot and you start to wear this is called a bumper guard, you wear it out, make sure they replace the guard. Because if you don't, you start to wear in the frame, you're reducing the playability of the frame, it's structural integrity. So make sure you replace the guard too. So pay attention to that. So if you're not replacing the racket, when you restring it, look at your head guard. You can put head tape on it, but if you're not, replace the guard. Pay attention to that because that's very important to how your racket plays. So if you forget and you wear into it, I remember years ago, I started to be a traveling salesman and I didn't replace my brake pads soon enough. Well, now you got to replace the whole thing and that gets pricey. So pay attention to it. It's important, right? So if you restring a lot, you know, it's your 30 string jobs. It's probably time for a new racket.
Gotcha,
Usually every
gotcha.
1 to 2 years, but we're talking generally, depends on use, depends a lot on how often you restring, because that's the hardest thing you do to a racket.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah,
this is why you go to a pro, because they'll look your racket over. Hey, I notice your grip has a hole in it. Hey, I noticed this bumper guard is not in good shape. Can we redo it? And they'll ask you the right questions that help you help adapt the product and what you're getting to what you're doing.
Yeah, most definitely. So Alan, with the protective tape, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name, but what do you think about like does that affect, you know, the weight a little bit, or is it pretty
Absolutely,
negligible?
it does.
Okay, yeah.
Absolutely. Affects the weight, affects a little bit the playability, but it's mostly about weight. You know, back in the day when they didn't have replacement head guards, head tape was super popular because, you know, if you weren't, once you wore into the frame enough, it was done. So you just put head tapes, right? You know, now you don't have to worry about as much. You can adapt and just change the guard. And that's why they did it, because the head tape does affect weight and balance a little bit, you know, a little bit the feel of the racket when you play with it, but it's more about the weight.
Yeah, I'm glad you reminded me about that, because I think I might just try a strip again. I used to use it, and then I think when I switched to one of the Babolat rackets, I felt like it kind of threw it off for me, so I stopped and I replaced the bumper guard actually many times because I was pretty rough on them, especially, you know, like just scraping, you know, the cord, getting these low drop shots and stuff. But so with these bumper guards, can you get them off of Babolat, or you get them from the store or both?
You want a professional putting your guards on, and
Okay.
you know, it's ironic for me as a Babolat rep, and Babolat being, you know, like a stringer for the Pro Tour for 20 years and developing electronic stringer, and I know about strings and rackets and weights and all that, is that Babolat grommets are some of the hardest to put on.
They are
And
hard.
here's why, because the elbow system we've talked about doesn't go on a bias, it goes straight. So when you go around the corner, it's hard to get that grommet in. And so, you know, typically people who do it a lot, I was embarrassed in China seeing the young people putting the grommets on within, you know, 3 minutes when they're putting on the new rackets, and I'm like 20 minutes, but whatever. You know, some guys will heat the grommets up, some guys will put it in hot water, some guys are just froze, it's not a problem. But, you know, they're hard to put on, but you want the white guy putting it on, so you've got a perfectly adapted grommet for your racket. It's better if you do it with them. If you do it yourself, getting the parts right and all that, it's better to do it through a specialized service. But
I
pay
agree.
attention to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it took me a long time, probably longer than you, Alan, maybe like 30-ish. It just was so hard to get in, and I didn't do the whole heating thing and all that. But yeah, I'm looking one session now, and I got a little bit of a scrape here. Gotta watch out. But
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just pay attention to it, right? And if you start to wear through it, just, you know, change it out, right? Or have someone else change it out for you, and you're good to go.
Yeah, I might just do that. Probably prefer that with the weight. Let's see here. What kind of string tension would you suggest for a 12-year-old aggressive player? Stay away from the poly, you think, or what are your thoughts
I
there?
would stay away from the poly. I would still stay in the multi, right? And again, it's hard because your key influencer, i.e. your tennis pro, might do different. If you start to break strings, you can start to hybrid. You know, stay with a little, you know, more of a multi-filament string and string, you know, mid-level tension, and see how you like the tension. If you find it's not enough control, go a little higher. You find it feels a little too stiff for you, go a little lower. And then adapt. You're going to adapt your materials. You're going to adapt your tension. You're going to adapt your materials, your tension, and your type of, and you know, how you set it up in terms of you can hybrid as you mature. If you start to break a lot, you got to start looking at hybrid. But don't push it too soon, because I want you to make sure your arm is okay.
Yeah.
But everyone's a little different what they like.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, be a little careful there. Let's see. Q-Tenger. Hopefully I didn't mispronounce that. What tension increment should we adjust to feel the difference? 2 pounds. Thank you. Oh, Pat. There we go.
That's a great question. Yeah, 2 to 3 pounds, you'll notice the difference, you know, and make sure it's the same type of string machine stringing your racket, playing for Electric. So,
Right.
you know, do it on the same machine or a similar machine, and then you're good.
Yeah, beautiful. Love it. Let's see. Swirl wear 10x shock absorber to elbow pain. Don't grip the racket like a hammer. You definitely don't want to grip it too tight. I don't know if you've heard of that product, Allan, but kind of seen it floating around.
Well, I think coming from a, you know, played longer than I'd like to admit, you know, played college tennis, taught for,
Nice.
you know,
Oh,
20
wow.
years.
Yeah.
The problem that beginners have is that your forearm muscles are fine motor muscles. They're meant to grip and release. So what happens is you're a beginner, you're hitting, the racket's twisting a lot. So you start to grip the racket as hard as you can for an hour and a half or however long you play. And now you get tennis elbow, because what tennis elbow is, your forearm muscles have fatigued and your tendon literally starts to come off the bone, right? You start to feel soreness in your elbow. That's the tendon pulling away because you've overworked the forearm muscle, so it can't protect the tendon anymore. So as a beginner, you want to learn how to loosen your grip. You know, it's funny, like you'll watch the pros come up and it's a coin toss. You'll see them doing this. What are they trying to do? You'll see a pro do this. Like you'll see Carlos, sometimes he's playing a match. You'll see him shake his hand. What's he trying to do? Just trying to loosen his hand up. You'll see the pros shake their hands. They're just trying to loosen the grip up, because you want to squeeze that impact enough to stabilize the surface and then be relaxed the whole time. It's amazing. You know, we're unfortunate we can't see Roger Federer play because his strokes were so beautiful and he was so graceful. But all of these guys are swinging looser than you think. They're really swinging and releasing the racket. So at whatever level, you want to learn how to squeeze and release. So that's important. Just on a technical side, if you're a beginning to intermediate player, you've got to learn how to the proper technique, which, you know, I would suggest getting regular or semi-regular lessons so they can teach you how to properly turn and prepare and the right stroke. And understand there's not one way to play tennis. Say, Allan, I don't believe you. Go watch the Pro Tour. No one really hits the same. There's fundamentals, but there's, you know, a lot of different styles. And that's what's so cool about tennis. You play how you want to play. You find the product that's adapted to you and how you like playing, and the right footwear, strings, whatever, and you do it your way. You want to play at 10 at night, or you want to play at 6 in the morning, let's go play. It only takes 2 people to start, which is so cool.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, really great point there. Yeah, I just love the different styles to watch from tennis. And I was trying to think, there was one point I was thinking of making, but I'll go to the next question and come back to my point. Babolat gut, really beautiful, fascinating to hear from Allan the process of manufacturing of it. Recall when Babolat made the best gut on the market even before they made rackets.
Oh yeah, I mean, the ironic thing is, you know, Babolat is the heritage brand in tennis. So a year into the creation of tennis, the guy who created tennis comes to Eric Babolat and he says, "Hey, we need strings for racket." Babolat was making gut strings for violins and for surgery, for sutures and all that. And so before that, it was literally steel wire in your racket. So that makes them the oldest manufacturer in tennis. It started with that. Next year will be Babolat's 150th year in tennis. Right? So only 30 years in rackets, you know, footwear, a similar life cycle, a little sooner than rackets, but but they were always been product producers, and we still make gut for a lot of the pros on the tour and a few other manufacturers because it's a very, very specific process, right? I've been to the gut factory. Literally, they tell you whatever clothes you're wearing, you're going to throw them away at the end. Here's your smock that you're going to wear. You know what it's going to smell like because it's an intestine of a cow, right? But it's a month-long process where they're treating the gut, they're twisting and drying the gut, they're taking the, under black light, they're finding all the different fat particles and taking it out of the gut because it's all hand done. Like the ladies separating out the gut intestine, which is the first part of the process, looks exactly like it did in 1911 with the pictures on the wall. It's very, very labor intensive. So it was really interesting to notice. Really not humbling's not the right word, but really eye-opening to see how much goes into it. And the same thing, stringing a racket. It's very who strings your racket and how they string it. It makes a difference, even if it's the same machine.
Yeah, most definitely. The point I just remembered to make is you talked about the grip and how we should pretty much all be trying to grip it looser. And actually, California coach from there, Jeff Greenwald from Fearless Tennis. I was
for sure.
Yeah, and so I was at a camp with him, helping teach it with Gigi Fernandez and Peter Freeman and some others.
Wow.
Last year it was really fun in Tampa in his brick resort. But he taught a session which I assisted with, and one of the main tenets was the grip. How loose or tight you're gripping your racket, and it was very important for the players to be aware of what a 1 is, what a 10 is, what a 5 is, etc. So he had them squeeze the grip super tight and then like relax it like it was almost falling out of their hands, and explaining where Jeff said that for most of his career he played at maybe a 6 or a 7 out of 10, and on days when he was able to play at maybe like a 4 or 5 was when he played his best tennis. But he just, obviously, you get tight and it's hard to achieve that. But I just want to reiterate your point, about how helpful it is to try to stay loose. And for most of us, yeah.
And it's really about what happens is, you can do an exercise where you move the racket around, you barely grip it. Well,
Right.
How's your feel for where the racket is? Because understand, it's like driving a stick shift, which most of us don't do anymore. But if we did, you got to be able to change that stick shift without looking down, right? You got to feel it. So if I'm looser, I feel where the racket is better. My body, whether I know it or not, I feel better where the racket is. I only need to squeeze that impact, right? And that just to stabilize the surface. It's not about power. So, and that's what's the fascinating thing about tennis and why you've got to do a lot of product testing. A lot of when Babolat comes out, they have their own people who test, and we test not just the racket, but the cosmetic, because that's part of the process. That means something. You're finding your right feel and sensation. But if you can learn to grip the racket looser, your body can feel better what the racket's doing. But you're finding your sensation for what you're doing. So getting that right sensation is important with the racket, but also with your technique. And so getting with an expert who can help you find that's key. But if you grip too hard, you really can't feel what the racket's doing. You literally just feel a tight grip. And it's completely counterintuitive. But if you watch the pros go hit and see how, even though when they're swinging super fast, how loose they are, it's kind of shocking. It's a little counterintuitive. You think the harder I grip, the harder I try, the better. But you're when you grip something, you're really slowing something down, right?
100%. Yeah, and as you alluding to, you were then using your upper body too much, your arms, when you really should be utilizing your big muscles, especially your hips and shoulders, and then you want kind of the arm to come through as a byproduct on most of your
Here, I'm gonna
strokes.
plug in real quick. My computer's getting low.
Oh yeah, no worries. Let's see what else we got here. Gordon says Padel is dying in Northern Europe / Scandinavia. Busted flush and already had its day. Interesting. I didn't know about that. Let's see what else we got here. Gordon, we like your Babolat grass here in England. All important tennis in England played on grass. Roger that. Yeah, good stuff. I guess, Allan, maybe I'm going to ask a couple quiz questions and then I'll give something out if that works for you. Just
Great,
a
yeah.
couple, yeah. Yeah, so these are if you have one, let me know, but these aren't too difficult, but the first one is what country was Babolat founded in? So let us know, type it in the chat, and then the winner will get something. Well, just email me and I'll give you details. So that's the first one. Sometimes chat here is a little bit slow to load, but all right, there we go. Let me actually double check on YouTube because sometimes it's a little wonky. So it looks like Mark G has nipped the others. So Mark G, email me at mirabon@tennisfiles.com. Let me just write that here. Tennisfiles.com. Okay, there we go. And then Allan, do you have a
So
question? Or do you
the answer is right.
Yeah.
The answer
Yeah, go ahead.
is it's founded in France. Lyon is
Lyon.
where the headquarters are. They make Excel string there. They make the addiction string there. We finished the RPM string there. It's made in Germany and finished there. So there's manufacturing that goes on there, but also, that's where the company headquarters are, and we ship out of Corval. But yes, fifth generation French company.
That's right.
Family
That's
owned.
right. That's right. And do you have a question, or any questions that you want to get say? Otherwise, I can come up with another one.
Who is the youngest #1 player in the world ever? And he's a Babolat player. That's why I said it. Okay. That's all the hint Maribon said I could give you. Okay.
That's right. And I'm going to read out some answers here. So I'm seeing Alcaraz come in here.
Alcaraz is the guy. He's the youngest ever #1.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really a godsend with Nadal. I mean, Nadal's been on the tour since he was 14. I think he's coming up on 38. That's what I heard him say in an interview. That's a long time, especially as hard as he plays, for him to be out there. So an amazing ambassador for us, and his passion, his gentlemanly nature. It's just been so great to have him. And it's great to see Carlos be his own guy, but bring his own fervor to it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. So great. And let's do, so by the way, sorry, Eric, Johannes Lacuesta, we're actually tracking several different platforms. So the one on Facebook came up first. So that's the winner. And Mark was second. Mark, you already won, so you can't win again. Do you have, sorry, we got to spread the wealth a little bit. Yeah. And then do you have one more, Allan? Otherwise I can say mine. Whichever.
Well, you can say yours, and I might add one to it. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. How many Grand Slams does Rafael Nadal have? Little tricky, because you have several in
it's tricky, and it's interesting how the matchups go. I mean, his record at Roland Garros has been impressive.
Yeah. Oh wow, man, we have a lot of close answers, but I can't give it out yet, unfortunately. So that's not it. Good try. That's also not it. That's not it. That's not it. So you kind of got a hint a little bit here. Yeah. I was still waiting. You can guess again. Right? Like you didn't see it yet, right? The ones I highlighted. Oh, they're okay. Okay. And so here's the thing. So Eric actually was correct with 22, right, Allan? Right, 22. So, but Allan has already won So good try, everyone. But Jenny actually, oh, nice cat there, is the next one up with 22. So,
You're a cat
yeah.
person. Okay, good for sharing that.
Yes, good for sharing.
What is the other heritage brand that Babolat partnerships with?
Hmm.
Heritage brand. Think about Grand Slams. This is another shameless Babolat plug by myself. I've got no pride, okay? I just want you guys to know that, but you picked up on that already.
No, I don't believe it. All right, let me start highlighting. So John says Slazenger. No.
You're in the right country.
Mm. Mm. Hmm. Tough one. Stumping the audience here. Come on, give some more guess. I know they're all Googling right now. Oh, illegal.
Okay.
Illegal. Yeah, I should give him a little more, maybe.
Second hint.
Okay. We get Gordon says Wimbledon.
It's Wimbledon.
Boom, Mr. Gordon. Ah, beautiful. Oh, good
That's
try,
the
Eric.
new part of the new bag. That's going to match up, right?
Yes.
There'll be a Wimbledon Pure Drive that comes out. This hits mid-May.
Oh, yeah.
With some other cool product. But, it's been an interesting partnership, right? Because you got the two oldest, heritage brands working together. And this is, again, part of that partnership. The ball kids are going to be in bars, be wearing the Babolat footwear this year there. So, heritage and heritage, it's what's weird for me, I'm in California, and I've moved a lot around California, but you go to Paris, I'm like, how old's that building? Well, it's 2,000 years old. I live in Irvine, it's 35 years old. And, when I went to college, which was a long time ago, but let's not get into it, but that Target there used to be a strawberry field, right? It's different in Europe. It's, heritage. And that's why Eric Babolat and the family name, fifth generation, I talked friends of mine from the East Coast, and he had moved to California, and his dad was upset because, like, hey, we got a family name here. Like, East Coast, they understand history at a different level, but Europe's even another level. So the product and pride in the product and product development, I mean, this is your family name on it. So, the byline for product for many years are like tennis runs in our blood. So it's nice to have passionate people. We were at sales meeting, and they played when Carlos beat Djokovic at Wimbledon last year. It's like, wow.
Pretty
It
cool.
still choked me up when I think about how, wow, that was
Uh,
just an amazing match. And to beat Djokovic there on that stage, unbelievable. Wimbledon
yeah.
is still an exciting event to watch because it's so unique.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's just amazing how well brought up as well Carlos is, and like super humble. Like I'm so glad that he's here because he just reminds me a lot about Rafa, so
Well, in his
pretty
own way,
in his own way.
I think tennis has been fortunate to have such great champions who represent themselves in the sport so well. Rafa just won, the European award. I'm not gonna that Lazar. Oh,
Oh,
I cannot
Lazare.
pronounce it
Oh,
right.
yeah.
Djokovic won Sportsman of the Year, but as a European Sports Award,
Yeah.
and for his contribution, and
Right.
obviously Federer represents the sport quite well. Also, the gentleman nature that they brought, along with how competitive tennis is, they really represent our sport so well, and so exciting. And Babolat,
Yeah.
that's part of what they look at. Can we get not only someone who's a good player, but who is a good role model for the sport and for the kids and adults they influence?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's very lovely. Let's see. I'm just saying, okay, email me, Mark, Eric, Jenny, Gordon, well done. Um Allan, so we've had great session here, a lot of really fantastic questions and your answers. So I guess maybe try to sum up at this point, like just overall general advice, if somebody is looking to try to find the best rackets, footwear, strings, and grips, like I just maybe some general wisdom on making sure that they are able to do that.
The racket, you know, is like a high performance vehicle. It's going to take you somewhere, hopefully to victory, but hopefully either way you compete well with it, right? So this is your chassis. You're trying to find the right blend of power and control. You want to use the most powerful racket you can control. The smaller the head, the more maneuverability and control. The bigger the head, the more forgiveness and margin, but less maneuverability. So typically, the larger head's more power. So popular right now is 98 to 100, but you might like a 104 or 102 if you want a little more forgiveness, right? In this chassis, the beam width, the thicker the beam, the more power. The thinner the beam, the more control. The more rounded it is, right? Versus, a square beam. Square beam will give you more feel and control. That's what's more squared versus rounded. That's more feel and control. So if you're trying to find the right head size, the right beam thickness and frame shape, right? And then you find the right weight. More weight is more power. Less weight is more maneuverability and control. Typically, when you're starting out, you start out lighter, so it's easier for you to get to the ball. As you develop, you go heavier. With the more powerful rackets, you don't have to go as heavy as you used to be. The only way back in the day to get a more powerful racket was to make it heavy. You don't have to do that anymore because the rackets themselves can be powerful and it's bigger heads. Lastly, in terms of the racket itself, the more open the pattern, the more power and spin you get. The more dense the pattern, the more control you get. Less spin, less power. So that's the chassis. The string material, polyester strings, will give you more durability, more spin, more control, less tension maintenance, and they're harder on your arms. Even if you're softening the material, it's still about spin and control with polyester. Whereas a multi-filament is going to give you more feel, going to give you more power, it's going to give you better tension maintenance. If you hybrid those materials, you get a blend of both. Figure out what works for you. Tension with the string, higher tension, more control, lower tension, more power. With the stiffer materials, try to string lower. Find the right grip shape for your hand, leave room here for your grip, and be willing to pay attention to that. If you feel like your hand is slipping a lot, get replace the grip so you're not having to over grip the racket and hurt your arm, right? Or create a blister in your hand because it won't grip right. Replace those overwraps. This is your tires. This is your engine. This is your chassis. When you restring, change the guard if it needs it. If you see the string is starting to fray because you're wearing through the guard, some people don't hit the ground a lot, others do. So replace that. So on the footwear side, find the right length, width, and upper volume light, and understand the different variables you're working with. Some are durability support stories, some are lightweight comfort stories, and others are more around width and comfort. What do you like? But make sure it fits for you. If you find a hot spot on that shoe when you're walking around, it's not the right shoe for you, and it's not universal, right? Shoe manufacturers were making different width, but every shoe is different. And even within a shoe that you make, all these uppers are sewn. Like you try the shoe on, it's the same shoe you buy again and again, but you're like, wait a second, this doesn't feel right. It could be a slightly different upper you don't like. So try the shoe on if you can. Another reason to go in store if you can do that.
Yeah, most definitely. Awesome. Great summarization. Very thorough, Allan. Well, I want to thank you again for your time. Really great and very important session on just how to make sure to pick the right gear for you and being aware of the trends as well, which is always very interesting to note on the various gear. And, appreciate the, you sending me all this awesome stuff that I'm really enjoying playing with the Pure 98, the RPM Blast. I'm really excited to try the Exalt very soon and the other Racket, and really enjoying the Propulse Fury 3 as well, and the grips.
Yeah. And
Really
it's
good.
a great time for all you to be in tennis because the product is so adapted now to
Yeah.
what you like. You say, if again you compare it to a car, I want an SUV. Well, there's 4 sizes you can buy. You want electric, you
Yeah.
want, it's adapted to you, but understand the variables and adapt it to what you like and be open to change. Your game changes, you improve, or maybe your playing conditions change. It gets summertime and you're losing some controls. Maybe you need to tighten up the strings because it's summer. Winter, you might be a little looser depending on your region.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a beautiful thing with Babolat and other brands too. But Babolat has so many different types of rackets that cater to you and strings and things like that. So it's very cool to be able to change up depending on what you need and things like that, and experiment. And we're all different. We all have different needs, and it's all there for us. So really, really great stuff. So Allan, also any particular websites or accounts that you want the folks who are listening to check out from you?
There's babolat.com for general information. Sweet Spot Tennis does a lot of Instagram. I call Jeff, who runs the shop, Jeff Iverson. I call him Mr. Instagram because he does post quite a bit. So that's Sweet Spot Tennis in Burbank. So if you want to get a flavor of what he does, it's there. Tennis Warehouse does a great job. And again, they do authentic reviews. It's them reviewing the product, not us. In the same thing, I gave you that product, but part of the fun part of the process is you can like or not like a product. That's part of the fun of it, right? So go and look at what they have to say. I like Tennis Warehouse University because again, it's independent guy, this poor guy who has to sit in a room, but do all independent scientific testing so you can compare. But at the end of the day, it's good to understand the variables, but you're going to go out and hit it and see how you like the field. Because at the end of the day, it's not what I like. It's adapted for you. And you understanding the variables, now you can make the choice and adapt your choice as your game or the conditions change.
Yeah, 100%. Well said, Allan. Well, Allan, I want to thank you again for your time. Just about 2 hours per usual, as we do every year, and it's and your time's valuable, so I appreciate it. And thank you everybody for listening as well.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, I'll encourage you to check out
what
Babolat.
you do and all the time you spend to make this happen. We appreciate your passion and your support of tennis in general. Thank you.
Oh, thanks so much, Allan. I really appreciate
your
the kind
pleasure
words.
To work with. Thank you.
Thank you, Allan. You too. So thank you, Allan. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you next time.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.